Let's start with Zach's episode today. What was the first thing that you wanted to talk about today, Rachel?
Mm, you know, I was really struck by how much he uses external tools to kind of harness motivation. So he uses a vision board and he looks at it every day and doesn't necessarily engage with it on a very deep level, but he looks at it all the time and it helps him to keep his goals top of mind. But what I was struck by is that a lot of people use that tool, but I don't think it works for everyone the same way that it works for him. So I'm really curious to know what you think about the idea that sometimes if we have our goals in our face all the time, it can almost feel demotivating for some people. We see that in the digital mindset gym. It's kind of this like crushing weight of like, I didn't do it yesterday. I didn't like do the thing I was supposed to. So what do you think makes Zach different from
Mm,
athletes
It's
who,
it's a
yeah,
really interesting one. I think maybe it's the age at which he found this. He was 12 when you're like in frontal
yes,
cortex doesn't stop developing until you're 25 on
yeah,
average, and
yeah,
maybe a bit later for guys.
yeah.
Like he is like I think it may be his age. That'd be my first guess. What do you think?
I could see that absolutely being the case, kind of in the formative years, using it as a tool, it became comfortable. And I think his early success with it played a role in that too. So he already had a story that this is an effective way for me to achieve things that I want to achieve.
Mm. Yeah, you said something like, when I set my mind to something, I need to achieve it. I'm not going to stop until I achieve it.
Yeah.
And like, that's a really interesting phrase. And I think it has that kind of very, I'm going to use the phrase yang energy. So kind of like that masculine stereotyped energy of like force pushing, it's going to
Yes.
happen, as
Yeah.
opposed to yin, like more calm, nurturing, smooth. He used that kind of like aggressive energy there. And I think that's what a lot of us get caught up in terms of like motivation strategies and like, okay, I've just got to think like that. Um, so it's quite interesting to see him have that attitude towards like I am going to go out and achieve things. But yeah, maybe it's like it's baked in from being younger. And I like what you said about how sometimes we are confronted with those goals. Like we sometimes when they're constantly in our face, it becomes this like I'm not there yet.
Yeah, it's like because it is all about the outcome when you're looking at the end result constantly. Yeah. It's interesting you bring up yang energy, that kind of masculine side of pressing. And we don't mean masculine and feminine in terms of actual gender. It's just a way of describing opposing forces. But you also mentioned when we were talking just before this that he's a very soft spoken person and kind of has this like calm demeanor. So I wonder if he's just struck a really good balance between that's kind of who he is, that like yin side, but he can tap into the yang when it matters.
Yeah, like that to me is a fully developed human or a fully developed personality, someone who can use that yin and yang. And I'm going to put in the caveat here. I don't think there's such a thing as a yin and yang energy. I think it's a useful metaphor and
Yes.
a useful way to think about things. I'm not a believer in chakras and things like that. And I
Yeah.
don't think this ties into it. But I do believe there's like a way of thinking about this and a way of nurturing your own personality. And Zach seems to have done that quite nicely. Very softly spoken, very gentle, very kind, and like from the interactions that we have, very giving and very kind of nurturing. So there's like this maternal side almost, and
Mm.
then there's the paternal side as well. Like he's
Yeah.
like quite goal driven, action
Yeah.
orientated, knows how to push himself evidently, and
Yeah.
I think it's maybe he can be so forceful and pushing because he has the nurturing side as well, and that is also developed to such a high level that they kind of there's tension on the arch. They kind of they balance each other out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of persistence, it's how long did he have to work to reach the games? Was it 7 years?
Something like that. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember off the top of my
7
head.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He set the goal, I want to make it to the games next year. And it took 7 years. It's
Mm,
incredible. That's a
yeah,
that's a high, high level of persistence and drive and patience.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
wonder how much of it does come back to that. Like this is why I was interested in speaking to him about the Tony Robbins seminar,
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of people who go around on the, and I don't mean to just shit on Tony Robbins straight away, but these type of seminars where you
Yeah.
go there, you feel motivated for 3 weeks afterwards, you like
Yeah.
really take action and it becomes too much and you burn out. And then next year you're back at the same seminar on the
Yes.
next year and you kind of go around on this seminar merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
But I think there too is tying back into his early influences because
Mm,
his father kind of set up all the family started focusing on nutrition,
mm.
on goal setting. So everybody made vision boards. And there's one more thing.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was.
I
Yeah,
don't
they
remember what it was either. But it wasn't just that like he went to the seminar and was really motivated. It was that, okay, now as a
the
family,
environment.
we're
Yeah,
changing the way that we do things. Like this is our new reality now. That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
And that environment thing about like surrounding himself in that place, that organization, that structure, that community, transferred exactly into his current gym that he's set up or been a part of setting up. And it's the whole community that are behind him and behind each other, which is really cool. See, that's what a community should be, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And then, I mean, again, like speaking of community, the way that his gym is set up, where anybody can come and work out with him if they want to.
Yeah, Thursdays at 10:30. I think I
Yeah.
think I've put that somewhere on my internal calendar that I'm
So you
going
can go
to.
visit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna happen. Yeah, it's really cool. Like the fact that he's consistently referring to his goals, because really we want that goal as a filter that's there, that it kind of, you can run any choice between through the filter of your ultimate goal, and that narrows down the available options to you, and therefore you choose the most appropriate one. He's obviously doing that, and I think that's the value of his vision board, but it doesn't become overwhelming also because he's breaking it down into smaller steps. Like he hadn't quite got the, I want to be this type of person in this moment, and maybe there's some room for growth there, or maybe it's just
Yeah.
subconscious and he knows exactly who he wants to be.
Yeah.
But he has that kind of, okay, this is my purpose, this is what I'm, these are like the 7 things I'm working on right now,
Yeah.
and therefore my choices become very obvious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's so engaged in the process through that, like you said, because it's broken down into smaller steps. It's what is my job right now when it comes to achieving this goal?
Mm, yeah, yeah, very focused. I'm thinking long term as well. It's like, okay, I'm going to build up this kind of social media image, and like I'm going to build up this this property portfolio, and like, and that may sound to someone like not training related, but it
Mm,
is, because we think about like, how does this affect who I'm becoming the 10 years from now? Like, where does that lead to? Like, what's the ultimate goal? And sometimes when you have that bigger vision, that
yeah.
ultimate grand vision of 10 years,
Yeah.
the moment to moment trials and tribulations become maybe more meaningful and more
Yeah.
purposeful and less significant when you kind of, you view them over the time scale of 10 years. It's like that, he who has a why can bear almost any how.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
How
What
would
did
you
you
recommend, go on, sorry.
No, you ask me. Go ahead.
Okay, how would you recommend athletes use this kind of vision board? Like, we don't use vision boards very much for a
No.
few reasons.
We don't have
Um,
room.
yeah, yeah. We all live in cities, we've got small spaces.
Right.
And so yeah, how would you recommend people use this kind of refreshing of the vision to keep the top of the mind awareness and always looking forward?
You know, we really teach athletes to focus on the emotion behind their 3-year vision. So it's less about the what, and as you have mentioned very briefly, and more about the who am I becoming. So we use a tool in our journaling practice called the direction review, and the first part of it is the vision, where we just simply write out, in 3 years time, this is this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is why it's important to me, this is why that'll feel good. There's a second and third portion to that. Should I talk about that too, Tom?
Yeah, yeah, good for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the direction is where we explore, how am I doing so far? Am I doing the things I need to do? Do I need to adjust course? If I had to get it done faster, how exactly would I do that? So it's kind of our accountability tool, like our check-in, like, am I really on track? The final portion of it is intention. So we suggest setting between 2 and 3 intentions each day or for the week on that day around how we're going to get closer to achieving the vision. And this also really nicely ties into the AMWAP, the as many wins as possible exercise that we have, because then you're just giving yourself wins all day by doing the things that you said you would do.
That's nice as well. I like the way you kind of you've broken it down from vision to execution, because
Yeah.
sometimes when you think about, okay, I'm just going to write down my vision, what I'm going to achieve, what is success to me, like who do I become, that kind of thing. It feels a lot like manifesting, and that's not what we're doing here. We're not just, it's not The Secret. We're not like wishing and hoping it happens. We are putting together a plan of action every day and reconditioning that filter
Yes.
to limit the options presented to us.
Ooh, can we talk about that filter? Because I think that's a really critical point of this. Zach brought up The Secret, and yeah, we don't teach manifestation. What we teach is that all of us have subconscious stories, and all of those stories lead to what's known as confirmation bias. So the things that we believe are the things that we see in the world. The easiest example is if I buy a new pair of shoes, all of a sudden I see everybody wearing the same pair of shoes as me. And it's not because I'm suddenly trendy, it's because now I'm noticing it for the first time. They've always been there before. So confirmation bias teaches us to believe our beliefs. But when we change our belief system, when we're focused on who we're becoming and we're looking for opportunities to become that person moment to moment at decision points, we teach ourselves to see the different ways that we can behave.
Useful.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, like as you're speaking then, I was applying that to, oh, this is how I've changed, this is how I've grown in my life and seen that happen. Like the story I used to have is I'm never going to be successful, in air quotes, whatever successful means. Or another one that's even better, I think maybe an example is I'm always going to be skinny. And like I was a skinny kid growing up, and like that's what I saw. And every time I struggled in the gym, that's what I saw. I saw someone who wasn't strong enough to push, and didn't have enough body mass to push. And like I saw that repeating itself, and the proof therefore gathered towards it. And now, eventually, it shifted through a lot of work, and a lot of proof in the physical world that just didn't stack up. But also, I think more importantly, the awareness of the belief and the pointing out to myself, like, oh, this belief that I'm seeing myself as skin is just bullshit, and it's like it's a process and maybe it's not fixed. And
Yeah.
that gave me enough
Yeah.
flexibility to then look at the alternative proof, which was the growth that I was on,
Mm.
physical and mental, and then that reinforced the story, and I was able to grow through that.
And thus, we've explained a large part of the Mindset Rx method.
Winner. Right, we're done. We'll
Yay.
close the podcast now and never do another one. It's good
We are
enough.
done.
We completed mindset forever. If we weren't to complete mindset and were to go back and explore something else, the thing I found very interesting is how Zach spoke about his dad being very driven, action orientated. Like, right, I've had enough of this. We're going to go and like change. We're going to make a change. I'm going to take you all to the seminar. I'm going to buy you this book and do whatever. Like, we're just going to do this, and then we're going to move on. And
Mm.
then the contrast there was with his mother and the story that he touched on very briefly. I don't know whether he's mentioned that before. I haven't heard him talk about it before, but
Mm.
his mother wanting kids, like, and having was it 13 miscarriages or something
Was
along the
it
way,
seven?
or a
Something
few
like it was
seven. Yeah,
many.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
was a
was
lot of
many.
miscarriages. Yeah,
Heartbreaking.
yeah, it must have been incredible, and in terms of just so difficult to go through that time and time again. And the thing he mentioned there is like his mum became quite I don't know, maybe protective in this
Yes.
move, like became quite protective of him, which I can completely understand. I think I'd probably do the same in the same situation. And I'd definitely do the same, had the same upbringing, background, belief system, like that's exactly what you'd do.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how he saw that and related it to his body image and the
Hmm.
way he saw himself and the way that that created his overweight childhood.
Was it almost a learned helplessness?
Yeah, maybe let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we grow up with a parent who basically like infantilizes us, doesn't allow us to make mistakes, doesn't allow us to go through things and face hardship kind of on our own terms, face adversity, they kind of remove obstacles for us. What ends up happening is we learn that we can't remove our own obstacles. We need someone else to do it for us. We also tend to expect that to keep happening when we're adults.
Mm.
This is like the giant complaint about millennials. I'm sorry to every millennial out there. I'm not saying that this is you. Everybody gets upset. I'm not saying that that's true, but
Well, it's the Oedipal complex, isn't it? It's the you have the mother in this role, and this example like protects the son. That's the story of it, and so there's no difficulty to push against. And it's like, do you want the question that unravels that is, do you want a safe child or a safe person who relies on you, or a strong child? And that's the trade-off between the two. It's I think, impossible one to answer, but there's a kind of a vague gray area in the middle that's probably about right.
yeah. Yeah, I think most people would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but interesting how that kind of we're not just a product of our own mindset and our own experiences. We're a product of those people who are around us and surround us, and their experiences, and the people that touch them, and the evolutionary lineage that led to each individual person, and that creates you. It's a very literal way of a village. It takes a village to raise a child, like in that kind of way. It's like all of these things going to raising one person.
Yeah. All of these things go into influencing one person and who they are, at least when they start mindset work.
Correct. Yeah. Nice. What else is on your list, Rachel?
What else was on my list for this one? I want to dive into, I think you're going to talk about visualization, right?
Well, I was going to just ask you endless questions about visualization.
Oh, I mean, that works for me. I highlighted here that one of his best qualities is how persistent and resilient he is, and he was able to describe himself that way. I think that's actually a really powerful lesson for all of us, is the ability to see what we're really good at and what we love about ourselves, and being able to own it rather than that energy that says nothing I do is good enough. It took me 7 years to make the games, right? But what he sees is like, wow, I've been really persistent and resilient, and I respect myself for that. That's cool.
Yeah, he's reinforced his strengths.
Yeah, I found that really neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. So he's gone away and he's not turned something negative into a positive. He's seen it really truthfully, which is like, it's not pitting himself about it, but it is, you know what, I'm really persistent. I really stick at things. And that reinforces the positive path. That creates that confirmation bias you were talking about earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. We just went through a we at some point this year, a few months ago, went through a programming cycle in digital mindset where we thought about our strengths and our character strengths, and we kind of like we reinforced those. What was your thinking in prescribing that for everyone?
It is so easy. I think especially for folks who work on mindset, we can get into this habit of thinking about it as though I'm trying to fix what's broken about myself. But that's not how we think about mindset work. Mindset work is this privilege to facilitate our own growth. It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about growing a flower in a pot. It's a totally different thing. So when we're thinking about fixing what's broken, we're always thinking about the things we don't like about ourselves and that we want to change. And I'm not saying that there aren't things that we don't like about ourselves and want to change. That's a part of being a human person. But if we can harness the things that we do like about ourselves, the things that we respect and value, that points us to who we're becoming, because we can just enhance those qualities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely it does.
Yeah. Like all of us have superpowers. They're all different. And overemphasizing the things that we don't like about ourselves to the detriment or minimization of the things that we do like about ourselves that we would not change for anyone or any reason, that's a mindset mistake in and of itself.
Yeah, I like the way that we're not trying to see everything as a strength, and we're not ignoring our weaknesses. We're not ignoring the fact that, like, Okay, maybe we take the easy option occasionally when we might not, or maybe I'm a perfectionist, like maybe I go down that route, like maybe that is my natural tendency, and I'm still going to work on that and still going to try and improve it, and still there's room for growth there. But maybe I should, alongside that, instead of just trying to eliminate what turns out to be parts of who I am and uniquely me, maybe I should lean into the other side of that.
Yeah.
So, for example, yeah, maybe you're a perfectionist, but maybe what comes along with that is you have a great eye for detail and you can really notice things that other people don't. And I think that's maybe what it comes down to is like, okay, we've got these two extremes, and somewhere in between that is this ideal that we've been taught that we
Yes.
should aim towards. Was it Aristotle's ideal or Plato's? Can't remember. One said that like there's an ideal between two extremes, and that's where virtue lies. I think it's quite often we're like, okay, I should be bang in the middle. I should be this exact piece. But actually, either side of that equation, either side of that middle ground, lends itself to some positives too,
Yeah.
and maybe leaning into those and using those, your persistence and your willpower or whatever it is for you, that is where you create your growth, as well as maybe just nudging yourself away from the kind of the non-serving extreme too.
Yeah. I mean, each of us at our best is in a place of self love. And I don't mean self love like, I'm great. I love myself all the time. It's that parental love that we've talked about before. It's I am a human person and I have weaknesses that I do not find acceptable and I will change them, right? So the disciplinarian side of being a parent, but also at the same time, the unconditional support. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely does. It's almost chaos and order again. It's
Yeah.
maternal and paternal. It's
Yes.
these yeah, nurturing and forceful sides, which Zach seems to have put together into one neat human being as well.
And one real neat human
Yeah,
being.
yeah, he's perfect. There's nothing wrong with him. I'm sure. I'm sure he doesn't get down himself at all or find things difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Um, he's just got endless willpower, and that's what it is. Um, so visualization.
Hmm.
Talk to me about visualization, and how you believe he used it.
Man, he hits the sweet spots that we talk about at Mindset Rx'd. So visualization needs to have two components. There's the macro vision of who am I becoming? What are the things I'm achieving? Who do I need to be to do those things? And then what are the steps I need to take to be that person? Then there's micro visualization. So he talked about visualizing events. That's how we create strategy. That's the sport specific side of visualization. Though you can also apply that kind of thing to interviews, to um, dates, whatever your personal area of growth happens to be. We can apply that micro visualization to how am I going to do the things? What's my preparation going to be like leading up to it? There, he does both, which I think is fantastic because a lot of people tend to do one or the other.
Mm. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm really glad you brought up the micro versus macro thing, because they're both important. One of them, well, they're both rewriting the story, but one of them's giving you very specific technical cues about this is what I'm going to do in the moment. And one of them is giving you a kind of much broader gist of this is what I'm feeling and this is how I'm getting there. And like I thought is really cool, because we teach this time and time again, and like sometimes it gets a bit kind of put down that you shouldn't be looking at how the feeling is, but like we
Mm,
see it working, like we see it time and time again working with athletes with that kind of this is how I'm going to feel when I stand on the podium. That's exactly what Zach said. When I'm standing on the podium, this is how I'm going to feel, and
yeah.
this is what the emotions I'm going to have, and that was really cool.
Yeah, it was super cool. Well, and there's a scientific reason that that works too. When we our brains cannot tell the difference between reality and our imagination. There's no difference to our brains. The thing that creates a memory is emotion. So if I am imagining myself achieving some goal and there's a high amount of emotion to it, I'm creating a memory of achieving that. And that not only feels good, but that feel good feeling leads me to doing the things I need to do in order to get to feel good.
Mm. So it's this feeling that reinforces the action that we're going to get there. So again, looking at the future is very useful if we're predicting it to be, or if we're creating those memories of like, I am feeling this way, I am going to be successful
Yeah.
in my pursuit.
Yeah, totally. And I do want to highlight this. There's a big difference between doing that, visualizing success and how you'll feel when you achieve a goal, and fantasizing.
Mm,
Fantasizing is similar in that you're visualizing achieving a goal, but it's somehow like idealized. So
mm.
it's
Okay,
like
so what would be an example of that
uh
for a
it
typical
it
CrossFitter, let's say?
it feeling easy and effortless.
Okay, it's because that's
Most
a lie to yourself.
Exactly, because if you are going to podium at the games, it is not going to feel easy. It's going to suck. It's going to
Yeah,
feel like the
yeah.
hardest thing you've ever done in your life. So, effective visualization incorporates what we call bracing. And bracing is a way of reminding ourselves, all right, this is going to be the hardest fight of my life. I am up to the challenge.
Yes.
I want it bad enough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and preparing yourself, steeling yourself for this is,
Yes.
hey, this is gonna hurt. Like, this is
Yeah.
gonna be uncomfortable and this is gonna be painful. But like, again, it's almost like Matt Fitzgerald was talking about that strategy of like, you've got to look at how uncomfortable this is gonna be.
Yes.
This is gonna be incredibly tough. And I'm not gonna hide from that. I'm gonna own up to it. And instead of trying to make the task easier, I'm gonna enable myself to be tougher and more
Yeah,
resilient.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If we picture ourselves like floating to the front of the line and, smiling really big and everything just works out perfectly. When that doesn't happen, that disconnection from reality feels like a slap in the face. So that's when we see athletes like crumble.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I laughed
There's
when I said that. That sounds very mean.
yeah, that's all good. We can laugh. um, so there's something that Alison Scudds mentions in not next week's podcast, the week after, where she's talking about effortless effort,
Mm,
and that is, I think, the goal here that we're trying to
mm,
prepare ourselves for. And when we worked with Brent Fikowski as well, he was in a similar thing of like, okay, this is how I know it's going to feel. It's like it's still hard work,
yes.
the output, the wattage that you're creating, um the the actual physical tough is the physical act is so tough that your body's screaming and
Yeah.
hurting and you've got nothing left. But the choice to put yourself in that place becomes almost not a choice, because you condition your mindset and your belief system to say, this is who I'm becoming, this is who I'm on my, this is who I am. And
Yeah.
that's what the
This is where I
visualization
belong
does.
right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm meant to be doing. This is what I do, as
Yeah.
opposed to I'm forcing myself against a non-serving belief system.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that aspect of visualization is really important to note. It's not the same thing as fantasizing. We do an exercise in Digital Mindset Gym called premeditatio malorum, which is the act of premeditating evils, which is to say that we picture things that could go wrong and how we'll deal with them. So you kind of prepare your mind to face hardship.
Nice. So, for example, if missing a lift in competition,
Mhm.
or if you turned up to the gym late, or you turned up to, or you missed a flight on your way to a competition, something like that. Like all these things that could go wrong, you've prepared yourself, and you've kind of you've already been there. If you're using the idea that your mind doesn't know the difference, or your brain doesn't know the difference between
Exactly.
reality and imagination, you've already been there. You've already done it. So you're
Yeah.
not figuring it out for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. You're not figuring out for the first time. And because of that, you have the confidence that you can deal with other hardships too.
Yes,
Yeah.
nice. Like that a lot. So we've got this kind of visualization or imagination work around the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And like, this is who I'm becoming and the feeling behind that. We've got the what could go wrong.
Mhm.
Okay, we like what's the challenge, difficulty I'm working on, and how can I generate the confidence to adapt it? What about the micro side of things, like pre-lift routines, pre-workout routines, like going up to a successful lift, a successful gymnastic movement, a skill practice?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to perform micro visualization. We do like to teach athletes to do it right before they lift because it just reinforces good technique. Many athletes need to start micro visualization by picturing themselves performing the lift from outside of their bodies. So I may like watch an Instagram video of a great lifter and just put my face on her face to help me visualize that better. That's the first step. As we become more skilled in that visualization, eventually we move into our own bodies. So that's what Zach was describing. He's at that stage now where when he is doing that micro visualization, he's seeing it as though he's performing the movement. So he's hanging from a set of rings. His eyes are seeing what he's going to see. This is also a really important technique for competitors. If you know your venue, then you can create some really good moments for yourselves by visualizing yourself performing in the venue, seeing what you're actually going to see.
Yeah. And again, not seeing it as though you're going to breeze through it and it's going to become easy, but seeing it as like, you know what, I'm working really hard. Like I can feel like there's certain bits of visualization that I'll use, and sometimes in a CrossFit scenario and sometimes in another scenario where I feel the physical sensations that I'm visualizing.
Yeah.
So like that is a crazy thing that your body actually creates that physiological response from your imagination. This is why you get nerves and all this kind of stuff, and you get butterflies in your stomach, and like you feel sensation, your heart rate increases because it's preparing itself that. And like that is what you mean when you're saying that your mind doesn't, or your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. There's physiological responses.
Yeah, it has no idea. And I love that. I love the addition of the feel. Anyone who has ever picked up a barbell and it was heavier than expected, pre-visualization helps with that.
Yeah.
If you're preparing yourself for like, all right, it's gonna feel heavy on this first pull, it changes the way that the lift feels.
So we're trying to create this like full sensory experience, because sometimes this is why we typically use the word imagination instead of visualization at Mindset Rx'd, because visualization, you're visualizing, it's your visual field. And sometimes people get wrapped up in this idea that I've got to be behind my eyes looking out and I'm creating this visual field in front of me. And that's what visualization is. But you don't have just one sense, that you have everything going into that. So you have the feel of the barbell, the touch, the sensation. Like if you can feel that knurling, like you can almost get there. If you can feel your hook grip digging it, and it's like, now I'm preparing myself for reality. And the smell of the chalk and the dirty environment, and like lovely. Like that's the best thing. Like everything, the sound of barbells, like even the taste of that kind of the iron blood's like metallic-y taste in your mouth when you've been on the assault. Like if you can prepare yourself for that and kind of teach your subconscious that, you know, I'm safe in this environment, I've been here before and I didn't die, because that's essentially what your mind is trying to stop you from doing. It's like, shit, I'm going to die, there's no lion chasing me down, and I'm just and I'm just doing this because like I'm preparing, I'm saving myself from death. So if we can show it that it's safe and it's been there before, then we have the freedom to perform.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything
Yeah. Well, you mentioned imagination, and that kind of triggered something for me, but the dog keeps on barking at me. She's very impatient this morning. So I lost my train of thought. Yeah, imagination. Well, I remember when I first started working with you, one of the things you said that I think is really important to point out here too is that we're always using our imagination constantly. We're almost never not using our imagination. So harnessing it in this positive way, at least more frequently than we're doing right now, is a really great way to start basically rewriting the stories that we're telling ourselves. We're basically just taking control of our mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like how we're consistently imagining what we're doing. When I was interviewed by Jens, who's a friend of Mindset Rx, the other day on his podcast, and it's the Professional Fitness Coaches Association. A little plug for them, because they're doing great stuff, and they're very close to us on the podcast chart as well. So we need to overtake them in a friendly way. Like I was being interviewed with him one morning. I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be like a fairly big audience. Like it's like I really like them. I want to create like the best show possible for everyone. I want the audience to love it. And I was brushing my teeth before, and I was, without trying to, visualizing the interview, how I wanted it to unfold, and this kind of this practice before I got there. And there's a reason we're doing it. this in this case kind of interestingly became non-serving, because like, oh, what could go wrong, how would I overcome this?
Okay.
And like it became like a fear thing, whereas I wanted to
Mm,
go in there with more of a kind of like an openness to the environment. But
yes.
you're right, we are always imagining things, we're always conditioning our mind, we're always conditioning our mentality and who we're becoming, just like our posture conditions our body. And I'm going to
Mm,
sit up more
yeah,
straight when I say that.
yeah,
Yeah, we're always conditioning who we are, and
yeah,
you can be deliberate with that, or you can just let things happen to you.
yeah. Oh, I just really want to touch on the fact that it's so common that we start out with this serving behavior of using our imagination, and then it turns into self-consciousness, and then we get stiff and rigid, and it's a lot harder to just be ourselves. Yeah, I appreciate that you called that out.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
there's one last thing I wanted to touch on, which
Let's do it.
was how Zach didn't enjoy training initially, how he
Yeah.
hated it, how it was like an uncomfortable thing. But the physical act of performing things,
Mm,
and performing habits actually created the mindset change. It kind of, I see it as this working from two angles.
yeah.
There's one, the objective proof that
Mhm.
reinforces your mindset. If you're in this environment that is um, reinforcing your mentality, this creates that, and your experience. This, when we talk about experience, is one of the four E's that creates beliefs, and
Yes.
your experience creates your beliefs. And then there's also the work you do on your mentality that frees you up from this non-serving beliefs too. So they work together, and I found it quite interesting how Zach started off with smallish patterns, smallish behaviors, and they grew in confidence and um, grew in what he believed he could achieve.
Yeah. Well, and so different from many people who take up any type of lifestyle change. Instead of going 100% all in, I need to do everything perfectly or nothing. He went in with a friend and they just did what they wanted and didn't. And I think he described it as like goofing off. Like
Mhm.
they, they probably, he was like, probably weren't getting very fit. But at the same time, he was just building a habit. And sometimes taking the, I wouldn't say sometimes, often taking the approach of going into the gym to enjoy ourselves is much more serving long term than going in saying, I need to be at 100% every single time I walk in this door.
Mm. Yeah, you're so right there. This
Yeah.
is like triggering the idea or the memory of when I first started climbing. I
Yeah.
did it and I loved it and I got
Yeah.
really good really
Oh.
quickly. Part of that is like newbie gains, but like because
Mm.
like you're not very good and you experience, but part of it is I was just having so much fun. And then it's like, you know what? I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to start training for this. And I'm going to be dedicated because I know I can get more and I'm going to force more out.
Yeah.
And it sucked all the enjoyment out of it. And when the enjoyment went, I stopped training as frequently. I had to force myself to be there, and I didn't improve very quickly. Now I've managed to find the fun again in training. Same thing
Yeah.
happened when I was in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Did
Yeah.
really well. Like I improved very quickly. I started like doing very, very well in competitions and that kind of thing. And then I was like, right, I am going to train 4 times a week. And that's soul crushing in Jiu Jitsu to train
Mm.
4, 5, 6 times a week. And it takes the fun out of it. It's like, can we bring the fun back into our training?
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we do that? How do we bring the fun back into training? I think so
Yeah.
many people struggle with this.
Yeah, I like to think about what originally excited to me about it. Like, what was it? Like, try and put myself back in those environments. How do you think about this?
Mm. I went through a period of time where training wasn't fun, and for me it stemmed from putting a lot of pressure on myself to improve very quickly. And so I was overtraining, like under recovering overtraining.
Mm.
Um so my body didn't feel good. Like I was in pain all the time. So for me, bringing the fun back to training was in part letting go of the pressure I was putting on myself, which meant I had to uncover the story that was happening in the first place because I didn't know it was subconscious. And then intentionally defining why I was in the gym. And
Mm.
we talked about this on the podcast before, but I'm not in the gym to be a competitive athlete. I'm not interested in that. I'm in the gym to feel good, get my body moving because that feels good, and to feel strong and capable. Those are my goals. And so it's kind of like we've been talking about. Everything I do in the gym is filtered through that lens. I'm not here to be a competitive athlete. I'm here to feel good, and
Mhm.
feel strong and capable. So there are days where I skip the Metcon and only do my lifting. And there are days where I just do the Metcon and skip my lifting. And there are days where I do both. And it all comes out in the wash.
Mhm.
So it's a really long-term relationship I'll have with the gym. So each individual training session is exactly what I need in that day.
That's really nice. And what I like about that is how it's unique to you. Like
Yeah.
that to me, like it makes me feel good as well. The idea of like, I'm not here to be a competitive athlete. I'm not here to be winning competitions. Like
Yeah.
that to me is good. But to other people, that might be the dreariest idea of
Oh
a
yeah.
vision ever. That might be like, oh, okay, well, what's the point in competition? That's what I used to
Yeah.
think anyway. Like it's like, what's the point of doing this if I'm not here to win? And like to
Yeah.
them, that might completely turn them off. But they might not be in an environment that's competitive enough for them to grow. So maybe them seeking something more competitive, maybe them treating themselves a bit more like the elite athlete that they want to be,
Mm.
and kind of and redefining success, that will help them find the fun, because that's what was maybe fun about it originally anyway.
Yeah, and now you're making me think, what is fun? What we all have fun in different ways. I don't have fun competing. I do compete, but I don't have fun competing. I have fun reading, sharing experiences, putting together events. Like that's how I have fun. So how we have fun matters, but it also matters what our ultimate purpose is. If we're working towards our purpose, then what we're doing is fun.
Mm,
But nothing about my purpose has anything to do with being a competitive athlete in the gym. It's completely incongruous to what I want to do with myself.
precisely.
Right.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, this is why we talk about mindset being a one size fits one
Yeah.
like tool. This isn't, you can't create something for everyone or an exact recipe for everyone, because you are you. Like we spoke about with Zach's situation and his parents, like everything that created them was unique to them and therefore created a completely unique individual.
Yes.
It created that person beyond any other defining character trait that they have or attribute they have, biological or otherwise. Like that, who they are is an individual, and that's what makes you uniquely capable to go out and express yourself.
Mm.
And also it creates your personal meaning, your personal interest, what triggers you to be excited, what captivates you.
Yes.
And it's all about leaning into that, as opposed to trying to, as as well as conforming to what's essential, but like as opposed to conforming to what other people expect of you.
Yeah. Well, we've basically just described intrinsic motivation. Apologies. The dog is chasing her tail now.
It's a very
Got it.
dog-based behavior. Got it. It's never getting away.
Yeah. uh, the silly girl. Our
Find intrinsic motivation. Yeah.
intrinsic motivation, right? It's extrinsically motivated for us to think, I have to prove that I belong here, or I need to like win this workout. Like why? To what end? But intrinsic motivation is based on what we find fun and what fulfills our purpose.
Nice.
It's simple.
Yeah, and it takes work
Simple
to
but
find that,
hard.
but
Yes.
it's you. And you know what, I think the work that you have to do there is turning off the bullshit and listening
Yeah.
better, because quite often we confuse those in external voices that we've heard so much that they become echoed within our own mind. We confuse those for our own thoughts and our own individual perspectives. But
Yes.
that real you, it's in there, it's deep
Mhm.
in there, and it takes patience and softening and listening
Mhm.
instead of forcing this outcome.
And we've circled it back to environment, right? Like the people that we surround ourselves with and who we're following on Instagram, those are all influencing what we believe we're supposed to be striving for, like what makes a good human being.
Yeah. Which is exactly why we do the mindset training camp as a group. That's exactly why we've got the digital mindset gym as a group. It's why we do the coaches level 1s and 2s as a group, because it's all about the group that you surround yourself in, and the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And you know what, geographically sometimes it's not possible to change your environment. It's
Yes.
like sometimes you've got a job, you've got family, you've got commitments, you've got whatever that mean I have to be here and there's no getting away from it.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not the most serving people to be spending time with, but you live in 2021 / whenever you're listening to this podcast. This is the most connected time ever, where you can find your group of people and they're around. And yeah, that's what like is a huge part of creating change.
Absolutely. Yeah.